Hi everybody. Today we're going to go over some basic 2D character movement in Unity. To start out, we're going to use the legacy input system. We'll also apply our physics and forces using a rigid body 2D. We'll check for collisions using a box collider 2D. And in order to do a ground check, instead of our typical raycast, we'll use a box cast instead, and I'll show you how to draw with gizmos. And the final thing we'll do is make sure that our sprite can turn to face left and right depending on what direction we're going. So without any further ado, let's get to it. Here is a quick demo of exactly what we'll be doing inside of this video. We're going to create a little person that is able to move back and forth and really jump in between platforms and fall off the edges. So, getting started, first of all, I'm going to get into a different scene. And inside of this scene, really all I did was I created a player by having a blank box, and I added two other boxes on top of it for eyes and a mouth. If you'd like to do it the same way, you absolutely can. But the reason why I drew a little face on my player was so that I can see change when I move left and right. And when I get into my sprite animations, this is going to really come in handy. So starting out with this, oh, and then also for each of those platforms, I just sort of added a box sprite. A real important thing for our 2D game, just so you guys know, on our player, obviously I'm going to want to add a rigid body so that I can apply physics to it because this is a platformer. And a funny thing right now is when you add things into your 2D scene, they will not have a box collider by default. So if I ran the game, my player would end up falling right through everything because there's no collision. So let me go ahead and add a box collider to each of these items. I'll add a box collider 2D to my player. And then to do it to multiple things at once, I can just hold Shift and click on each of them. And I'm going to add a box collider 2D. Perfect. And then another thing I'm just going to address right now, if I go off of the edge, right now with everything set up the way it is, my player is going to spin and rotate, which, might be okay, but for right now, I don't want that. So I'm just going to freeze my rotation so that my player cannot spin around. If your player is spinning around, it's because you neglected to click that. All right, next, to actually add some movement, let's go ahead and write a player movement script. Inside my assets, I did create a scripts folder. Make sure that you are doing that and practicing good organization techniques. But inside of here, let me create a brand new, I know I already have player movement, but I'm going to do a second one. Player movement. I'm going to just call this one player move. But I'm going to go ahead and open up that script. And then starting out inside of my instance variables, there's a few that I immediately know that I'm going to need. One of which is going to be a changeable speed. Since it's changeable, I'm going to want to serialize this field. So serialize field, and I'm going to make this a private float, which I will call move speed. And I'm just going to default set to 5F. That will definitely change later. And I'm going to do a second serialized field, which will be for my jump force. And for right now, I think I'm just going to keep that at 5F as well. There is another thing that I know I'm going to want to add soon, which will be lives. I'll also want like a death animation, some other elements, but how about for right now I just focus on movement. So if I'm focusing on movement, there are a couple things that I'm going to want. I'm going to do this a little bit different from the way I did it in my 3D game, but I'm going to add two global float variables, one of which will be called horizontal move. And actually, if I want to do vertical move, I will do that later for climbing. But for right now, I'm just going to focus on horizontal movement. And I'm going to add a Boolean for is jumping and is grounded. And then next, I'm going to move these around a little bit. All of these variables will be for jumping. But in order to do the ground check, I'm going to add a couple of things. I will add actually 3 serialized fields. And what I plan on doing for my jumping is I'm going to do something called a box cast. A ray cast is an easy way to do a jump, but a box cast will be better because a ray cast generally will just be in the center of my player. So if I'm standing on the edge, I won't be able to jump anymore. If I use a box cast, that will eliminate some of that problem. So I'm going to do a private vector 2, which is going to be my box size. And this is probably going to change a little bit, but for right now, I'm just going to make it a new vector 2 of size 1 by 1. Actually, an easy way to write that instead of this would be vector 2.1. That's the exact same thing. And then next, I'm going to do another serialized field. This one will be a float, and I'm going to call this my cast distance. When I do my box collider, or I'm sorry, box cast, I'm going to want to offset it down a specific amount, serializing the field so that I know how to change it if I need to. But I'm just going to start that out at 0.3f, and then I'm going to add a final serialized field. And this one is going to be a layer mask. And the reason why I'm doing a layer mask, you don't necessarily need to do this. But with this layer mask, what I want is I want my player to only be able to jump off the ground or anything that's masked or layered as ground. I don't want them jumping off of enemies or other things. You can, of course, omit this if you would like. You'll just kind of omit that from your box cast as well. All right, and then next, in order to apply a force to my character, I'm going to have to add a rigid body. And since it's a 2D game, it'll be a rigid body 2D. And I think that's about it for right now. Starting out my game, I do need to access the rigid body, and since I placed it on my character and I'm going to need it, I can easily just do that inside of my start function. This way I didn't have to serialize the field. It's just going to be RB equals get component, and it'll be the rigid body 2D connected to my player. Of course, if my rigid body is not there, this will give me an error, which is actually probably a good thing. I don't want to try to move when I can't actually apply any sort of physics or force. All right, next thing I want to do is I'm going to start writing my update. Inside of the update is where I like to put all of my commands. Anything with player input is best inside of the regular update. And then physics will be best inside of the fixed update. I might as well start writing that now. Private void fixed update. It'll be best for the physics movement. Okay, so inside my update, first thing I'm going to do is for my horizontal move, I'm going to do it a little bit different from how I did it in my 3D game. I'm going to make this very, very simple. Instead of doing input.getKey and checking for like left or right, there's an easy one that's built into Unity's old input system, and it's getAccess. And specifically what I want is the horizontal access. Do keep in mind that if you do not spell this correctly, it's not going to work. So make sure, get access and spell horizontal correctly. And I'm also going to multiply that by my move speed. And actually, to make this extra simple, to go left and right, that's all I need for my input. That is going to activate both my A and D key and my left and right arrow. Okay, there you go. And then next, inside of my fix update, all I need to do is write rb.velocity equals a new vector 2, because we're working 2D. And in the x-axis, it's going to be my horizontal movement. So whatever my input was there. And then in the y-axis, in order to maintain the gravity, I just need to write rb velocity.y. If I happen to make that 0, it's going to kind of override my gravity and my player will fall really strangely. So I just want to maintain that same velocity. Perfect. Okay, this is a fantastic time to actually check and see if my player is able to move. So I have saved the game, and I'm going to go ahead and go inside of Unity. I do need to add that movement script onto my player. Which I have right over there. Now, when I run this, I should be able to move left and right. However, the face should not rotate as of right now. And I should be able to fall off the edge, but I cannot jump yet. So let's go ahead and add those elements. I'm going to jump back into the movement script. And the first thing I'm going to add is that rotation. Now, in order to rotate, really all I'm going to do is I'm going to flip my sprite over. And I'm just going to show you how to do that. That's going to be really, really simple. So if horizontal move is greater than 0, which means if my player is moving right, then what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to set the local scale. And do that, I'm going to write transform.localScale. And that is going to equal a new vector 3 at 1, 1, 1. Basically what that is resetting the original sprite. And then to flip it over. If I'm going to the left, so if the horizontal movement is less than 0 or going negative, then I'm just going to do this. New vector, -1 in the x-axis, and then leave the y-axis where it is. And what that's going to do is flip the image of the player in the x-axis. And it's just going to flip the x-axis. This would be a very good time to just double check and see if this works. So I'm going to go ahead and run the script right now. And afterward, we're going to add our jump and a ground check as well. So climbing in here, really all that I've changed is my player should be able to look left and right. And let's see if that works. Excellent. All right, we're looking good. So let's go ahead and add that jump. For the jump, first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to do a ground check. And I don't necessarily need to have this inside of a function. However, it's going to be really helpful for me because of the fact that I want to add some stuff with animation. And that's just going to be easier inside of a new method. So I'm going to write a new method called ground check. And this is going to return a Boolean, so true or false if I'm on the ground. And earlier I mentioned that I wanted to do a box cast. Well, here's how you do that. Physics.2D box cast. And then inside the box cast, I'm not sure how well you can see some of these words right here, but I want to have a vector2 origin. That's going to be the middle of my player. I'm going to want a size, which is going to be that variable that we have up here, the box size. And I also need a angle, which is going to be the player's angle. I'm just going to set that to 0. A direction, I'm going to move that downward. And then I'm going to add one more thing, which is going to be a layer mask, checking for the ground. So writing this whole thing, transform, whoops, not tree mode, transform.position. So that's going to start me off at the player's position. And then the box size is going to be the size of the box. And then the rotation, I'm just going to set that at 0f. So it will be the exact same thing as my player. The direction, what I would want to do is transform.down. However, transform.down doesn't seem to exist. So I'm going to write transform.up and make that negative. That's going to do the exact same thing. And then 2 more parameters. The other one is going to be the cast distance. So that is another variable that we put right here, but how far we want that to go down. And then the final thing I'm going to add is my ground layer. If by any chance you chose to omit the ground layer mask, then you will not be adding that. All right. So if that actually hits something, then what that's going to do is return true. And if it is true, as in I am grounded, I'm probably going to want to return true. Otherwise, I'm going to return false. And the reason why I don't actually need an else is because if this statement is true, then what return is going to do is it's going to break me out of this method and back to where it was called. So I don't need an else in this one. All right, next, inside of my update, in order to jump off the ground, I'm going to want to check if I'm grounded. So is grounded is going to equal my ground check. There's that. And if I am grounded, so if is grounded is true, I don't need to write it this way, but I'm going to write it that way just for anybody that's new to coding so that they can see it. You could just write is grounded because this is a Boolean. However, if is grounded is equal to true, I know is helpful to a lot of people that are first time seeing code, so I'm going to write it that way. And also, I'm going to check if I added an input, and this is going to be for my jump button. I'm going to write input.get button. I could write get key, but what get button does with jump, do make sure that you're spelling it correctly. But inside of the old built-in Unity input system, jump is the spacebar. So if I'm on the ground and I press spacebar, what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to make that is jumping Boolean true. And then inside of my fixed update, if I am currently jumping, so if is, oh, I didn't realize I misspelled it, is jumping. Easy way to fix this, instead of going to each of these, I can right click and click rename and change that to jumping. You notice when I use rename, it changes every instance of that variable. Sorry, if is jumping is true. If that's the case, first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to add a force to my rigid body. And that force is going to be an upward trajectory. So it will be a new vector 2, 0, and in the y-axis, or up axis, is going to be the jump force. And I'm also going to want to add a force mode 2D impulse. The reason for that is because I want it to be a sudden jolt of force. I don't want it to be a gradual velocity change. And then a final really important thing is when my player is jumping, if I never make this false, they're just going to keep adding force and my player's going to go flying way up high in the air faster and faster. So I do need to make is jumping false. And that doesn't stop me from going up. That just makes it so that I don't keep applying the force over and over again. Just once from the ground. Okay. That is basically it. There's actually one more thing that I do want to add. An annoying thing about the box cast is the fact that when I write box cast, I'm kind of doing this blindly. I have no clue what this looks like. So to help out a little bit, Unity has a very handy built-in tool called the Draw Gizmo. And they also have a method that works well with it. It's on Draw Gizmos. And inside of it, I'm writing gizmos.drawWireCube. And all it's looking for is a center and size. So the center of it, I want to be the same thing as this center, which is going to be my player's current position minus the cast distance. So minus transform in the up direction times the cast distance. And then the size of it is my second parameter. That's just the box size. Perfect. Okay, let me go ahead and save that. And then I think I have everything that I need inside of my code to make my player jump. I'm just going to need to add a few things inside of Unity. So those few things I'm going to have to add are the layer mask. I'm going to have to set each of these to ground. And cool thing right now is you can see that box cast. I can manipulate that if I would like maybe make it smaller on the y-axis and change that to down. But everything inside of there is going to count as my player being grounded. And then final thing, again, I need to add that ground layer. So on each of these, I'm going to go, okay, you guys will not have this from the get-go. So I'm going to click Add Layer. And in layer 3, it doesn't really matter where you put it, but in layer 3, I added this layer called ground. Next, I need everything that is ground to be that layer. So I'm going to click on all 3 of these at once. Easy way to do it is hold Shift, click this one, and then layer ground. And then final element. After I've made each of these a ground layer, inside of this script, I did that serialized field looking for a layer mask. The specific one I'm looking for and the one that I want to jump off of is the ground layer. So I need to click on that too. And now I should have absolutely everything I need to jump. Running this script, I should be able to move left and right. This will do my ground check. So I can still do that just fine. And if I press the space bar, or the jump button, of course, now I can jump off of anything that is the ground. All right, guys, that is everything for this video. I hope it was helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will be with you guys for the next one.